So I'd like to start with a bit of an introduction, and please bear with me, guys. I'd like these guys to give a little bit of a longer introduction than they normally would. If you could just kind of highlight your experience with both IMs and headphones, because I know for some of you that's not readily apparent given what you're doing now with your different job titles now. So if we could start with the one and only Mr. Carl Cartwright.
I knew you were going to start with me. I was like, I was hoping everybody else would say something first so that I could tailor my comments. Because, I like the very short introduction. At any rate, my name is Carl Cartwright. I'm with Westone Laboratories. And we, of course, do in-ear monitors. We started making in-ear monitors back in a rough sense, if you want to consider custom fit product with speakers in it back in the late 80s when the first Walkman boom hit. And from that it progressed into how can we make it more comfortable, make it stay in place, make it sound better. In the early 90s I was able to work with a couple of pro touring bands which kind of really led us down the balanced armature direction, because the problems that these bands were having, we were approached by Bill Chrysler to work with Def Leppard and with Rush, and the problems these bands were having were related to ambient sound and their monitoring. So the singer was having a real hard time hitting pitch for Def Leppard because things were so loud, and there was a timing issue with the size that stages had progressed to in the early 90s. And so we started with a balanced armature approach because you could first make that a hearing protection device and still have a decent sounding speaker, because dynamics typically need to be vented somehow, otherwise it gets a little tight sounding. At any rate, fast forward in the mid-90s, we met Jerry Harvey, and we created Ultimate Ears by Westone. That eventually split, and we also built some earpieces with Shure for a while. And along the line, after those endeavors, we decided, since we brought a lot of contribution to the category, that we were going to go ahead and go out as Westone Laboratories with our own line of in-ear products. And we do both universal and custom fit products to fit different needs. And we've had some very interesting products along the way. Anything from the first multiple driver universal fit products, 3, 5, 6, 8, whatever it is, to ambient products now that for musicians on stage are designed so that they can be a little bit more cognizant about what's going on. So I definitely am more of the in-ear guy. My experience with over-the-ear headphones is, wow, some of those things sound really good. So I'll leave it there.
And next we have Mr. Matt Engstrom. Sure.
Thanks, Warren. Yep. Yeah, I'm Matt Engstrom. I've been with Shure next month. I'll have my 20th anniversary, so not quite as long as Carl has been at Westone, but quite a long time. Kind of crazy company to have Ultimate Ears, Shure, and Westone on a panel. I think it's very appropriate. A lot of where the industry has gone over the past 20 years started with the folks in leadership of these companies, and we're all pretty proud to remain where we are. And though we did work together on a couple projects over the years, as the market has grown, I think what we've been able to do is each carve our own niche and find sound signatures and profiles that appeal to different people. And there is no one shoe fits all. So really the end users, the customers, are who benefit from such a diverse path that we've all gone down over these 20 years. It's an interesting topic. It's one that I wrestle with. I'm the category director for earphones and headphones and most of the microphone line at Shure. Over the years, I've also worked on the wireless portion of the in-ear monitor systems, which again provided a lot of the impetus for this market to build up. The musicians on stage, they relied on the isolation. They needed good fidelity. They needed an accurate representation of what was going on. And I think there's a lot of still commonality in our three companies and many others to try to represent what's going on in the signal path. So have high-end IEMs now started to rival over-the-ear headphones? Well, I think 3 out of 4 panelists would say we have for a while. As a manufacturer of both earphones and headphones, each is kind of suited for its own application. We we spent 8 years working on an electrostatic earphone system. For me personally, it exceeds most over-the-head headphones I've ever worn. Still not up there with the Stax SR009, which is my personal favorite, but it rivals just about every other over-the-ear headphone that I've ever tried. So for me personally, yes, but it is a subjective topic, one I think we'll get into a little bit more. But in closing, I'll say that I'm very proud to be among such a great company. It's very nice to meet Dan as well, who I hadn't met before today, but sounds like a very interesting company. So, hey, how's it, Mike Dias?
Yes, and now we have Mr. Mike Dias, who of course was for a very long time with Ultimate Ears Pro, which is under the Logitech umbrella. But he also has a new project going on, which I'm sure he'll tell you about, that will explain some of the headphone process.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Matt. I am the current global sales and marketing director for Ultimate Ears. Now it is owned by Logitech. And my background, I was a ghostwriter for Jerry. I think this was right up with you guys right about that time. So it's been quite some time, and I am honored to sit on this panel with legends of the industry. I am now leaving Ultimate Ears to be a dealer, a hi-fi personal audio broker, shopper for the community. I feel so strongly in this that I'm leaving my position because I see such opportunity. It's a new company called Double Audio, and I truly believe that everybody in the community already knows what they want. They've already done the research. They can follow, enjoy the music. Are my levels okay? My levels okay? Yeah. So, getting back to that, I believe that everybody already knows what they want, and I believe I have a new way of doing retail, and this is where it crosses into headphones, where it's a very simple splash landing page. What's the latest piece of gear you want to add to your collection, and how much are you willing to pay for it? And everything goes on from there as a conversation. My background is much more rooted in in-ears and pro audio side, but again, by working with Logitech, I'm also able to see global supply chains and distributions in consumer electronics. As far as headphones go, I get access to all the Logitech data, all the in-ear data. I think there's a lot I can contribute to this, and I think that if we're only going to limit this conversation to sonic performance, so again, this depends on how we define performance, then we're going to have much fewer topics to talk about. If we open it up and question what we mean by performance, there's a lot more places that this discussion can go. Thank you, everybody.
And last but not least, certainly, we have Mr. Dan Wiggins, who I think most of you know from Periodic Audio. What you probably don't know is the gazillion things he's done elsewhere. So I'll kind of let him.
I just want to point out that Warren made me the anchor because I'm probably the heaviest guy out here. So, just saying.
Yay for heavy guys.
Anyway, yeah, Dan Wiggins. I've been doing acoustics for about 30 years now. I started out in the sonar world, moved into ultrasound with Siemens Medical and Medison. Got tired of dealing with the hard math and went into the easy world of audio. I started out in Siemens doing hearing aids. That was my first adventure with chasing my true passion, which is audio. So that was my first real in-ear product. But it's an in-ear product that a lot of people overlook in terms of it's because people use hearing aids because they have to actually communicate and interact with the world, not because they want to just listen to music. And they have to run for 16 to 18 hours a day. You learn a lot about comfort, a lot about reliability when you're doing a hearing aid product. After that, I went into just general gun for hire. Built a couple brands along the way, Dire Audio, was a big car audio home OEM brand along the way. I did a lot of home audio products for car, did a tremendous amount of recording monitor work. So I was living up in Seattle time, did a bunch of stuff for Mackie, so I did all their SRM 450, 750 PAs, did 624, 626, 824 studio monitors, did them all for events, so I did the Opal, the 2020 VA SQAs. So I've done a lot of pro sound stuff. I bounced around a lot. I worked at Sonos for a couple of years. I did all their transducers for everything from the Play 3 all the way to the Play Base, including the relaunch of the Play 5. Been doing mainly transducers. Went and worked at Blue for a year and a half. Logitech now owns Blue, so I did all the headphones at Blue. I did a lot of their microphones. I'd done some microphone capsules for them before. So my background now, I'm doing periodic audio, which is an in-ear product, but I'm also doing helping a friend launch an ultra high-end transducer company called New Audio up on the 11th floor of the tower. So I just just like playing with transducers. I like making audio. I've done everything from over-ears to in-ears to PA systems to studio monitors to recording microphones, even like the Rode mics. I did half of their transducer designs as well. So that's kind of my background, and I love playing with audio, making things sound great, and it's always interesting. So I think it's gonna be a very fun discussion.
Awesome. Okay, so given the nature of the question, I think we all probably have some opinion on this. I know you guys do. So the root question of the seminar is simply, do they now rival full-size headphones in performance? I think we have somewhat of a consensus here, or at least some very strong thoughts. I think the meat of this conversation will be more of a how than do they or do they not. But let's just start with the do they and do they not. How do you guys feel about that? And please, everybody chime in whenever you want.
So subjective. It's up to individuals. If you go to technical specs, each of the companies and some of the things that Dan has done, they kind of speak for themselves. I'll brag about the electrostatic platform because its correlation to the actual input signal, it exceeds just about every driver type that we've tested, which is every driver type out there. But when you get to personal preference, I think that's where the question can fall to the individual. Technically speaking, in my opinion, and from what we can measure, yeah, as you say, the performance is equivalent or in the same stratosphere. But then it falls to the personal stratosphere.
From a purely scientific standpoint, by far and away, an in-ear can easily eclipse anything you do in over-ear for two simple reasons. Number one, I don't have to screw around with a pinna. That's gone. Look around, everybody's pinna is different. There's no such thing as a universal pinna. You've all heard binaural recordings made. They never sound, instead of sounding here, they sound here in your head, right? They don't sound like, oh my God, I'm there. Why? Because it wasn't recorded with your ears. Your brain doesn't know how to interpret the signals that are coming through. If you ever actually get a chance to do a binaural recording with your own mics in the ear, and then you listen back to it, you're like, wow, I'm actually in the room. But that's because it's your own HRTFs, your own head-related transfer functions. That's number one. Number two, you've got a 2 cc at max volume that you're energizing with a transducer relative to 50, 60, 80, or 100 cc on a typical unit. Just the sheer displacement of air I need to generate a given pressure level is dramatically reduced with an in-ear monitor. And so it's easier to get very high dynamic range with much less stress on a transducer. Even though it's a lot smaller transducer, you just have a much bigger dynamic range. So right off the bat, you're in a better place. And then you throw in the isolation that you mentioned. There's no noise floor to deal with. I hate open backstrap or anything, so the performance range that you can play in with an in-ear is dramatically larger than over-ear. Preference, though. that's the kicker.
I would also agree that we have gone a long way with the in-ear monitor. I mean, when we started initially, we had the two drivers, the dynamic driver with the overwhelming choice, and I'm talking more about it for a while. And there were compromises in that to try and get a halfway decent sound that caused artists and, because that's primarily where the target was, artists on stage, with the exception of Keith Moon, really didn't want to wear over-the-ear headphones. And so, the goal was to try and make something that's wearable, comfortable, unobtrusive, that gives them a good sound. And it was just a natural progression to go from a dynamic driver. A lot of the real old stuff was based on Walkman style earbud speakers. And then we moved into the balanced armatures because of the isolation, because stage volume had gotten so loud. And then, then that progressed into silent stages. But the interesting thing is head transfer function. The ear canal, we're all trained from birth to hear the way we hear, and we're the only one that's ever going to hear that way. Because the uniqueness of our individual ear canals. I'm fortunate in that I have a twin brother that I work with. Even our ear canals, even though they're amazingly similar, they are different in volume and how an earpiece fits. And that can definitely have an effect on how you hear things. So the over-the-ear things, they can sound phenomenal, but what you do with an in-ear is you get rid of a lot of problems just by nature of the design. And that's one of the benefits. I think they're two different animals, and they both definitely have a place. But I do think that we, as a group of people, really phenomenal over-the-ear headphones, and it really becomes a choice like red or blue. What's going to fill your need at that point? What is your requirement? And yeah, I think that we've as a group made phenomenal progress, and that question really is a question of what is it that you want that fills your needs. No longer is there compromise by going one way or the other. It's what is your choice? What is your desire?
Yeah, I've done a dozen over ears, a dozen, in-ears. Voicing in the over ear is a lot harder than in-ear, just because there's so many extra variables. Even things like caliper pressure, the head gain. You just don't have to deal with it in in-ear. It's just so much more work.
Especially a closed back headphone.
Oh, closed back, yeah, it's even worse. I mean, does the person wear glasses or not? Anything like that. So it's just a much more difficult thing to work with. That's why I think you just can always get a better, you could just put more engineering effort into the sound quality of an in-ear versus just how does it fit and does it feel and are we adjusting for all the different, melon heads like mine to tiny heads kind of thing, right? So.
Just adding to that, because each product is custom built and made for each user. Again, we've eliminated a lot of variables and then we're dialing it in the tolerances at any one of these labs, and not taking away anything from the labs of over years. But the precision, clearly we take parts from manufacturers and we resort and even more particular with our tolerances.
Okay, so.
No disagreement, sorry, we're
No. That's exactly. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that answer. In my journey, I've come across a few models that I felt not only met the challenge of full-size headphones, but in some cases almost exceeded them. And it has to deal with very specific sound qualities, right? I think most people would tend to scoff at the idea that a pair of IEMs would have a better stage than a full-size headphone. And yet, I came across a brand maybe 5-6 years ago, Trulicent Audio, that sounded amazingly spacious, right? I think a lot of people did name it the HD800 of IEMs. Bass, I think, has been another area where people probably don't think of IEMs as being, on par. And yet, with the 846, I mean, that kicks, right? And so, dealing with your customer base and working with the challenges that you guys have had, what sonic qualities, if any, have you felt were a challenge to achieve the performance of full-size headphones?
I want to jump in first. Westone and Shure have both continued on with a very thin diameter nozzle. We're not the only companies at this diameter nozzle, but most companies choose the bigger bore. And right out of the gate, the main challenge is retaining high frequencies, especially north of like 4 or 5K through that diameter. And a lot of the tough work in what our companies have dealt with these past several decades is the high frequency response. The bass is, I don't want to say it's easy, but that's not what gets choked off as you try to go down. But interestingly enough, both companies, as we've developed all of our own stuff for a long time now, we've kept that. And that goes down to comfort. And the comfort and the fact that you want to keep it in here for a long time. So very first big challenge, I'm not speaking for you guys, but I'm just saying, based on what I know about your nozzle size, the tough part is high frequency response. And so the first battle is, what are we able to achieve up there, and then how do we want to do the rest of it? And we both companies have come a long way from where we were in the past when we worked together to retain that, keep it going. And there's other challenges, but that's the first one that jumps in.
I definitely, when we worked together, we chose that nozzle side because of comfort. Westone Laboratories comes from many years of the hearing healthcare industry. And so as we were putting the first earpieces together, a lot of that knowledge went into what the earpiece is. There's a term that my brother uses that is an interesting term. It's called radial pressure. And that has to do with universal fit earpieces. And the coupling system, the foam, the silicone, whatever it is, and what kind of pressure is that applying to your ear. And so, we made our job hard to begin with because we were very cognizant of that fact, and knowing from our experience how many different ear shapes there were, we came up with this size, and then have climbed the hill we created for ourselves. But I think that the successive models of IEMs have just shown that even though we did this for comfort, we were able to, in all instances, achieve really excellent high-end results. And the other thing with the high-end is the comfort of the high-end from home listening. So that's another issue that, in some ways you can really slam it down and have output there, but how do you shape it? How do you make it so that 4 hours after sitting down in the airplane, I find myself lost in the music without any kind of ear fatigue or anything like that. So those are all real important considerations. Comfort, I think we're the only, we do both. Well, we do both. You do universal fit. You do custom and some universal.
We're just universal.
Universal, yeah. And it'd be interesting, how do you deal with the challenges of the ear canal?
Yep.
And that kind of stuff. Those are really interesting things. Yes. I lost my mic. Sorry. How far? So nobody heard what I just said, right? Because I dropped my mic. Heard it. Okay.
So we're a universal fit company. That was a strategic choice in that there's a ton of highly qualified, excellent choices for custom fit, but there's really nobody addressing a really high quality sound with a universal fit that's very comfortable. With a background in hearing aids as well, you kind of know what the ear canals are. You go out and find studies, you can do studies, you find the distribution of ear canal sizes. So we went with a little larger bore than you guys did, but I ended up tuning and molding my own earbuds to fit correct, and doing our own multi-durometer build-ups on what we're doing, our silicone molds to make them comfortable to fit. And then focusing on the other aspect that a lot of companies miss, which is, number one, you gotta have pretty even pressure in your canal. You don't want hot spots. Number two, you want it to make it as light as possible. Weight drives discomfort in a hearing product like you wouldn't believe. So everything we do, we don't use any metals in any of our bodies. It's all the lightest weight polycarbonate blends we can do. We're doing super lightweight everything so that our universal IEM, and with the transducer and everything, I even put the transducer on. I design all the transducers. I do balanced armatures as well. It's less than 3 grams for the entire IEM itself. So it's an incredibly lightweight little product on either side. So people can wear it for a long time without that comfort. Comfort is by far and away the #1 concern for an IEM. If it's not comfortable, it doesn't matter how good it sounds. You're not gonna use it, flat out. You're not gonna go to a concert of your favorite artist and sit on a big old bed of nails, for 3 hours and enjoy it. You're just not gonna do it. So it's gotta be comfortable, #1. That's
the
big
guy will do that for me.
Well, the sound guy will do that for you, exactly. Isolation, though, is a huge one, I think. More and more people are, the cell phone. I have Tidal. Everybody here probably has something like that. I got 35 million tracks I can stream at any time I want. I can now take music wherever the world I am, and having good isolation is critical. When I'm riding BART in San Francisco, if I have to go there, I don't want to listen to the screeching of the wheels. I want 25, 30 dB of attenuation here, so I can actually hear my music. And I want to bring music with wherever I am. So isolation becomes a big one too. I think that a lot of over-ears miss, either because of the gaps they introduce if they're closed back or they're open back, in which case, well, they're worthless.
I think you really hit on a really important thing here, and that is the weight.
Your weight's huge.
The weight of an IEM compared to some of the other products that are critical to make that seal and maintain that seal.
Correct.
With motion. You can even go into the cable of the IEM. I mean, you can have a stiff cable on a set of over-the-ear headphones, and because of the clamping force and stuff like that, you've got some motion, and only when you get up to get whatever does it, come out. But with an IEM, even that weight and the location forces that go on to that little foam or silicone tip. I mean, besides the driver package being, what's the sound signature, what is it that we were after? It's that tip that becomes the critical component. It's the delivery method. It's our I don't want to say air, but I can't think of a better term.
It's your room.
It's our room.
Speakers, it's your room.
Exactly. That is our room. And the beauty of an IM compared to the over-ear is that your room is actually your room. It's only your room. So you're going to hear it totally in context of what you're used to hearing, because we've eliminated so much variability and stuff in like,
Oh, and I just was gonna say, anything else I have to take into?
you gotta speak up.
You also have to take into account how the earphones sound and build that in so that they come on naturally.
Yeah. Hi.
Don't forget about your UM56
Actually, can you hold that just for a second? So we're live streaming and recording this, and we actually need to run a mic to you just so like we can get that into the feed. So if you guys can just hold that for a second.
Can I hop on what Carl just said?
Yes, yes.
Don't forget about your UM56 tips that I bought a set that give me custom molded tips for all of my Westone narrow nozzle in-ear monitors.
Right, and that's something that, Larry, thank you. I mean, that's something that I think that everybody can take advantage of with everybody's product here that has a universal tip.
Yes.
Is that manufacturers can make something that is specific to your ear canal for retentive and comfort reasons. That, you know, you may say then there is no compromise. It's as close as this ready-made package is going to be to a full-on custom in-ear monitor.
Yeah.
But you also have to make sure that, you know, the person that's making the product, because there are different mold manufacturers that can make these products. You know, your soundboard diameter is going to be specific to your product and
yes.
what you'd like to see. You need to make sure that that's factored in, because let's say I used the diameter that I've used on one of my earpieces on yours, we could affect the sound quality of your product. So you just want to make sure that if you're going to go the route of a custom fit ear tip, that you take in account the parameters from the manufacturer. What are their recommendations?
You also have to be aware that your ears change shape over your lives. They're always changing. Every 3 to 5 years, go back and get them rechecked. You might need new custom fits. Just like, you know, everything changes as we get older. The shape of your ear canal change too. And sometimes after 3 or 5 years, like, I'm not having as much fun with my IEMs. Get new custom tips. You're like, oh, the glory is back. Yeah. It's just because your ears changed. You need to get new tips.
Mike?
With what everybody's saying, once you define the room, right, we work for weight, for comfort, for ease. Once you define that room, then the tuning gets really interesting, right, because you don't change the room. The difference in your sound signature, let's say you sell 7 different flavors of ice cream, it's all the same room, the flavors are just different, yeah? You have different flavors of ice cream, you have different flavors of ice cream, you have different flavors of ice cream, but you define them within your context of comfort and spaciousness and ease. So that's something that IEMs give that is separate and over here. You cannot just swap out sound signatures in the design process without designing an entirely new room.
We took that to the extreme in periodic audio. It kind of started out as an exercise in education for some of my engineers. I designed a really high quality 10mm beryllium dome unit, did a dynamic in-ear, and then I wanted to understand why I put so much emphasis on materials. So I built the exact same unit with a magnesium diaphragm and the exact same unit with the titanium diaphragm. The only difference between all 3 models is the metal of the diaphragm, and they all have radically different sonic signatures. And they're like, now we get it why you worry about this stuff. Everything else is the same, but you're like, these are completely different pieces with just one little component.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing. But you get that freedom with this kind of product to actually hear it and experience it. It's not like, well, there's all these other variables. No, there's only one. It's wonderful.
It's a great thing, and one of the interesting things is, you know, this paying attention to materials or whatever, but the sound signature. And this is not really, you know, pointed at anything specifically, but many years ago, down in Colorado Springs, there was a company called Audio Analysts, and they were a pro touring company. They still are. They've moved to Las Vegas now. But did you know Albert Lacazzi? Yeah. Yeah, he passed away. But he was a great guy. And I can remember when I first started on this pro audio in-ear monitor journey, You know, he told me one time, and it's a very simple statement. He said, "You're never going to make everybody happy with your sound," because I was obsessed with that. I was just crazy like that. And you know, it was almost like, oh, he doesn't like it. You know, he doesn't like the way it sounds. And he said, you know, when this is all about how does it sound. If you can make 80–85% of the people happy,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
Did you say
if you
5%?
can make- For me, it's 5%. For me, it's 5%. But 85% of the people happy, then you really have, you're starting to make a sound that is accessible.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, he taught me to understand that your sound and the nuance of your sound is very unique to you. And you need to make sure that that sound is accessible. And I always thought that was one of the coolest statements, you know, about sound that I ever heard is don't obsess about, you know, this person that wants high end that is much more than you like. Worry about the sound that everybody likes. And it's just, you know, you guys were talking, we got guys talking about sound. I mean, I think, you know, this is so cool. Because you can go on forever because it's so in your head. And, you know, Matt and his team made some great earpieces, but I'm never going to hear it the way Matt hears it. I'm only going to ever hear it the way I hear it. So you have to, you know, even an over-the-ear headphone designer has to come to that place. No matter what all the test equipment says, at some point, you have to make the decision that this is the set of components, this is the way it's going to go together, and then hopefully you have arrived at something that makes this vast majority of people happy, or at least is accessible to them, and is not so polarizing. And I think that's what we all strive for. That's what the over-the-ear guys strive for, and I think that those of us that are into the in-ear product category, you know, we think that we have created some really good products that are their own unique category, but sound as good as other categories. A few years ago, here at this trade show, we did a very interesting thing where we had a live room, with Gannett, beautiful sounding system. And we did a live room, and we invited people into the live room. And you know, it was not a headphone versus IEM comparison; it was a room versus IEM comparison. And we found that people coming out of that, you know, while they weren't necessarily exactly the same experience, they were both very satisfying experiences. And you know, maybe Larry in the back, he was a participant in the panel. You know, I think he had a very positive experience from both systems, and I think that you'll have the same positive experience with IEMs versus over-the-ears. So, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can sense we have quite a few questions out there, so I want to move to Q&A soon. Just two more quick things. I think if you ask most enthusiasts, they will say that there's still some things about headphones that they prefer. Especially, you know, something with a sense of air and space, right? Greater sense of air and space. What are the sonic qualities that you guys are still trying to achieve with IEMs that perhaps, you know, headphones do better at the moment? Are you guys still working towards meeting or exceeding certain areas within the sound quality?
Cost efficiencies. It's extremely more expensive to make an earphone sound good than a headphone. And we only started doing headphones about 9 years ago. So earphones my entire career. It's generally easier the more space you have to work with. So in the type of spaces that we work with, it's much more challenging to make an earphone sound good than a headphone. I can say that from our perspective anyway. I can't speak for any other company, but we struggle. I think we've gotten there. You know, it took an extremely expensive and many year consuming project to get the electrostatic. The 846, which you mentioned, that was a 4-year run. There's 3 people in the world that can put together the subwoofer performance plate that we make in there. So it took a lot of craftiness to get a low shape out of an earphone that you can get a little bit more readily out of a headphone. You just got a lot more mass. So I believe points to cost ratio. That might be one of the big differences.
For me, I mean, the two big things is in-ears image here, on-ears image here, and that's a very subtle shift of an inch or two, but it's a pretty big experience. But that's just physically where they're placed. I've given up trying to get that taken care of because I think the only way you'll be able to do it is a lot of signal processing externally to fake up some HRTFs, and really in order to do that effectively for an individual, you need to actually model that individual. So we're just not going to go down there and just say, you know what, if you can do it in IEM, just assume that your image is going to be in your head, live with it. To me, actually, the biggest challenge has been durability. People tend to beat the crap out of their IEMs, and you stop that. You people on the web stream, stop that. They treat their over-ears like gold. You know, they always make sure they're in the case a lot of times. They're very much in-ears, I see tend to whip them down and throw them down, things like that. They just tend to be a lot harder, in my experience, on IEMs. And you know, we have a 5-year warranty. We got Kevlar in there, and it's built. We still get things back. I'm looking at it like, how did you make this happen? Because I can stand on the body and it doesn't break, and you crack it somehow. But you know, when I was working at Bloom and Beats and some of those things, we get back headphones, they're like, well, it's got a little bit of wear here and things like that. It's amazing how much harder people seem to be on IEMs than they are on over-ears. That is always a challenge. It's nothing to do with sound. It's just like, how do you make something survive for people when they're used to? I think part of it is just it's so small, you just kind of ignore it. You forget about it. It's a small thing, but as a mechanical engineer, you're probably like, oh yeah, drop tests and smash tests and bend tests.
Every remake has to literally do the same test that the SM58 goes through, which is a pretty brutal test.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you guys got some experience building things that you don't handle drunk people on stage, so.
And I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but for your own personal opinions and preferences, do you use IEMs or headphones?
Both are indispensable all the time.
What?
Or the speakers, but long shots.
Yeah,
What was the question? What was the answer? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I use both a lot. I record in studios. I have headphones. If I'm performing, I use in-ears. On airplanes, I use in-ears. I usually have one or the other on my head, no matter where I am.
I bias more towards in-ears. I do have over-the-ears that I use. I listen, and you know, but I always favor in-ear. It's just my preference. I like the isolation. That's probably one of the biggest things for me. Is that when I'm listening to music, I want to hear the music. I don't want to be distracted by anything else that's going on around me. Oh, I thought something starts wrong. So for me, I listen to both, but I bias towards IEMs.
Like,
I listen to loudspeakers more than headphones or in-ears, and then in-ears and then headphones.
When I'm at home, it's loudspeakers usually, either my home system or I got a house full of Sonos stuff, with the side effect of working there for several years. So I'll listen to a lot of that, but anytime I'm outside the house, it's strictly IEMs. The only time I'm listening to headphones is if I'm doing it because I'm working on a client's project and we have to do some resolution, then I'm spending a lot of time with their headphones. But I'm an IEM guy just because they're super portable, they fit in the pocket. Wherever I am, I have my music with me, and I like the isolation. It's just me and my music and whatever I want to do.
If I can hop in one more time, to me, this is the question that's the most relevant to this whole topic. Because there's different ways of listening at different times. There's no, is one better than the other? Does one rival the other? It's what's the right tool for what I'm doing right now. Right? We have a PA system here. This isn't the silent stage with everybody testing headphones. This is the tool, medium that makes the most sense. When I'm on an airplane and I'm flying to Asia and I'm going to watch a movie, work, fall asleep, I'm going to use an in-ear. When I'm on the treadmill at the gym, I'm going to get over here. And, okay, I'm spoiled and I'm lucky that I get to use all different tools, but I'm a professional hobbyist, right? We put our money where our mouth is. To me, that's the right way to really approach the subject. What's relevant now? What do I need to focus on?
okay, great. So I know some of you have some questions out there. Just as a quick reminder, we do need you to speak into the mic and to stand up if possible, because that's how you get into the feed. So with that. that said, there's one right there.
Hey. So, I'm mostly an over-ear type of guy. Lately, it seems like a lot of the driving factor in the advances in over-ear has been driver technology. People using interesting shapes or just interesting materials to make their drivers do different things. With in-ears, the vast majority of balanced armatures are sourced from 2 different manufacturers, is my understanding. I know some people use custom ones, but it seems to be rare. Do you find that that limits your ability to advance the way that you might want?
Yes.
So I'm going to say this completely different. If we were all going to go to the grocery store to make pasta to feed the group right here after the meeting, we're all going to cook it totally different, even though we go to the same store. If we gave a tighter parameter on where we went to shop, one aisle, or even if we had all the ingredients sitting here, how I combine it will be very different than how Matt combines it, very different than how Paul combines it. It is irrelevant that there's 2 manufacturers. It has to do with sculpting. And there is much more to sound design than just the balance armatures.
I get a little bit of a different advantage because I'm a transducer engineer and design balanced armatures myself and actually make them in my own factory. So I have that freedom to do whatever I want. To a certain extent, it's great because I can make anything I want, whether it's dynamic, balanced, anything you want. At the same time, that's a huge curse because I can make anything I want and I have to figure it out. I will tell you, you're going to get a lot more variation in over-ear than in-ear in terms of the technologies and things put in, simply because of volumetric size. You can now play with shapes that are much deeper cone shapes, much more rigid, much more open, bigger outside diameter magnets that are actually larger than the diameter of the voice coil, things like that you can do in over-ear products. You can't fit it in an ear product because we've got such a tiny little volume to work with. It's got to fit inside your concha. If it doesn't fit there, it's really not an in-ear product. That's a big restriction, and so it forces a lot of times that's the trade-off of how many and what size and what can I do because I've got this tiny little volume to work with. And that's why you see, I think, less diversification, shall we say, in terms of solutions in the IEMs from a music standpoint than what you're seeing in the headphones right now. But that's just simply, when I can put Princess Leia-sized hair buttons on the side of your head, I can do a lot more than I can when I gotta put something really tiny here.
Check with float. Yeah, great point. And we dabble in all 3 transducer types. The electrostatic was by far the most interesting and difficult to work on. PAs, we both manufacture them and we also source them. It's probably a little known fact that we don't talk about it, but we make one of the armatures in one of our products, and we source the armatures in our other products, and the dynamics as well. So we dabble in all 3 transducer types. And we do that also in the microphone side. So we make dynamic microphones, ribbon microphones, condenser microphones, way back it was carbon and crystal. So we have a long history of that. And knowing the advantages of each has been important for our path. Mike's example of the grocery store is great. I also use a lot of automotive analogies where a lot of car companies are using similar parts to get entirely different results. I think that applies here as well. So regardless of what it is, the 2 big companies, they'll do anything you want at this point. So there aren't really so many off-the-shelf options anymore. 20 years ago, there was off-the-shelf options. I promise you that. And these were very limited.
Yes,
Especially with our diameter size and what was available. I mean, it was an interesting job back then. It was compensation. It was really, the whole art was compensating for, all the disadvantages that you inherently go into it with, and then focusing on the strengths. But yeah, we yield very different results. And we have an electrostatic transducer and a dynamic transducer. We're giving demos all weekend, and we've been doing it for a long time. People will hear similarities, even though those 2 transducer types couldn't be more different. It's our tuning of them and our treatment of them and some of the physics of the nozzle itself. But we have our house sound. And that, again, it's one of the big benefits for customers these days is they can kind of find a brand and then explore up and down their sound. And the companies that are kind of built to last, the ones that are here show after show, not for a couple shows here, they're the ones that have something that's relatable and they can expand upon it. But our $100 product bears resemblance to the $500, $1,000, and $3,000 So that's regardless of what company we buy our components from or whether we manufacture them ourselves. We hold to our expectations. So I talked a lot. I'll shut up now.
No, those are everybody here. I don't think there's much to be added to what these guys said. I think they covered everything. Everybody has a house sound. If you go out and you listen to the audio monitors from every manufacturer, it's their taste. And that goes back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier. You've got to be comfortable with what you were saying, even though a car has 4 tires. To use a car analogy, right? One of them's going to do really well at Le Mans, and one of them's going to do really good in the mud. And they all start with those 4 contact patches. And everything else is what the designer adds with their biases and their preferences. So even though there's a commonality as ground, they're so different. Everybody's, what they're doing, what they're trying after and achieving is completely different.
And to touch a little bit on that, like there's the push about, well, you gotta have a common, there's one curve that everybody prefers and things like that. I break that down very simply. You know, we're playing around building a brand. We're mainly doing engineering for other people. Our magnesium IEM, 80% sales in Asia, outside of Japan. Our beryllium's 10%, titanium's 10%. Russia, 60-70, Russia, Ukraine, and Japan, 67% titanium, the rest of beryllium. Here in the US, 80% beryllium. Different countries prefer different sounds.
And you know,
regardless of what scientific data says, you just look at the marketing data, right? And you're like, well, this is what these people like different tastes. Where they go? I got a good friend. She's from the Hunan district in China. She can't eat anything I make because it has no taste to her. I eat anything she eats, and I like scream in pain to that. I just gotta guzzle something down to take care of it because it's so hot.
Thank you for the preference.
Yes, you're welcome.
You're so right, and I think that a lot of it, you know, in Asia, the IEM market, just because of the physicality of the location, is huge compared to here in America. Because just like we were talking, you know, you get to listen to your speaker. You can go home and listen to your speaker. But in a lot of instances in Asia, they can't. Now you compound that by a completely different language. Okay, and the way that language is spoken, where the nuances and stuff. And that goes really towards describing why there can be room for so many different interpretations, because it's something fundamental that almost you inherited. You know, old guys like me, we love tube amps, right? I plug a bass guitar into a tube amp and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm messing with my thing again. But you know, that's part of what I grew up with. That's what I learned. That's what was right. And so that also has such a huge impact on how and what we hear. You know, those are questions.
Yep. Hi, so, hello, test? Hello? Okay, it works. So I'm an over-ear person myself. I started off with the SRH 940. I gave my parents SE 215s for Christmas, and currently I use Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered for basically anywhere I travel. But my main question is, for professionals who use in-ears or over-ears, is there a particular reason why one would use one over the other, such as the SRH 840 in the studio environment, or custom in-ear monitors on the stage versus universal on the stage?
I mean, personal preference is first and foremost. Enough people are using in-ears, custom universal in studios, and these days it's no longer odd to see people with headphones on stage. It used to be Keith Moon.
Yeah.
David used to have said. Now it's no longer a secret that people use stuff in their ears. If you remember early '90s, Michael Stipe with the huge, cables coming out of his ears on like the MTV Music Awards show. I'm on too. And everyone was like, "What is that? What is he? He has like antennas coming out of his head." No one knew what it was. Now it's kind of a cool thing. And you guys have really taken it to an incredibly artful level now. You know, the finish off. So it's more preference than anything. I prefer in-ears when I'm recording bands in the studio. We were talking about this earlier today about how click tracks and backing tracks that you hear, you don't want that bleeding out of the headphones into the ambient microphones in the room. So, and just the same goes for stages. So it's really up to the person. Of course, certain things lend themselves to applications more than the other. In-ears are designed for the stage. That's where they were born. Of course, they perform perfectly there. That's what they're for. But some people might not want it. that say, I just don't like things in my ears. And those people are going to want a headphone.
Yep.
So immediately compromise on the stage. But these days, less than ever. And in the future, even less than that. The limitations are the segmentation of it. But there's always things people prefer, and it may not be what you think for each application.
Comfort retention, I don't think you have to go further than that. You know, if you're on stage bouncing around, a custom molded IEM is the only way to go because it's going to stay put. A universal will come out. An overhead's going to fly off. Retention and comfort, that's what it's all about. If you're sitting in front of a console for 16 hours, you may not want something here all the time. Over ears are much more comfortable. I think that's what it really comes down to.
Agreed. It is personal comfort.
Totally.
So for those of you that make both custom and universal fit IEMs, how much time or what are the difficulties in trying to make a custom sound as good as a universal, or is that even a concern? Is it okay to have different sounds with different fits?
Yeah, I think that we always strive for our target group with a custom. That's part of what the product is. We also design the sound for the possible application. Okay, like for instance, Westone makes products for use on stage, and Westone makes products for use by enthusiasts, audiophiles. And we'll actually design the sound signature of the product for that application. Because of the unique requirements of that stage. I mean, like, take a Westone W80 or an 846 or whatever, you know, these different products that really, our goal is to really give you the experience of that room where it was recorded, right? That might not necessarily be the goal for an in-ear monitor that's going to be used by the bass player or a drummer live on stage. They have different requirements, and that earpiece has to live up to those requirements, so it's going to have a slightly altered sound signature so that it can be the tool that it's supposed to be. You know, custom in-ear monitors have gone from, you know, quite truthfully, back in the day, they were beige, so that they were hidden, as you mentioned. They were beige because, yeah, people didn't want to show that they were using something or whatever to wildly popular. But at the same time, the audience for those things has changed as well. And what they want out of that, you know, for this audience, it's not a tool. It's actually, I don't want to use, is the word aspirational a good word to use? It's an aspirational item. It's something that you're going to research. You're going to come to a show like this to listen to. If I've got, you know, like, a blues band and some like little outdoor thing in Colorado Springs, you know, they're going to be happy if I get them in ear, you know, and they can hear in a band shell that just is totally horrendous, and all of a sudden they can hear. They're going to be happy, and they're not going to care what the nuance at the high end is. But it delivers the information, it delivers the time information and pitch information. So, yeah, it's interesting. They are very unique, but the target is always the target that we design. You want to make sure that what you hear out here and what you get is what it is. So, yeah, we always strive for the same. Sorry.
If I can understand the root of your question, I think all of us put the same amount of attention to detail for both custom or universal, the same testing, the same processes and standards.
I have a question from our YouTube live stream. B6 wants to know, what are the characteristics of high-end IEMs that make them surpass top of the line over your headphones, and which IEM casing material sounds best as of today?
That's a good question. I got that one. If you want. So I've been working with a company called Eastman Chemicals. How many of you guys have heard of Eastman Chemicals? You've probably heard of Eastman Kodak. Remember that old thing? Well, they split about 15 years ago. Eastman was a chemical division, about 15,000 people, and there's Kodak, the film division. So I've been working for the last couple of years with Eastman Chemical, and we're actually presenting a paper coming AES. I have some information upstairs about the acoustical properties of different polymers. polycarbonate, ABS, Triva, Triton, a bunch of different things. And looking at not just rigidity of the material, but internal losses, internal damping, and how will it deaden things. It's amazing what you're getting with some of the new polymers, where they will give you 85–90% of the strength of a hardened ABS or a polycarbonate, and 20 to 30 times the internal damping. So where you might have ringing in an enclosure, we actually built IEM bodies for them, and then did measurements on a nice high-end, AP system with proper IEC couplers, and then external in a sound chamber, where you can actually see the ringing dying off in 4 to 5 cycles with the material like a Triva, versus 40 to 50 cycles with a polycarbonate. This is to go 25–30 dB down, and it adds a layer of clarity that normally doesn't happen there. So it's a very interesting thing to learn from a material standpoint of, wow, there are these materials that you can use that make big differences to an IEM. And in some cases, it's cheap to use. Some of these materials cost about the same as a polycarbonate or a ABS. They flow in the same tools. In some cases, though, like when you're doing different diaphragm materials, the beryllium versus a PEEK, price is insanely high, but it's really cheap to do a beryllium when it's really small versus a big diaphragm of it. So materials on an IEM make a big amount of difference, I think, mainly because the isolation, the immediacy, the dynamics you get, the sense of clarity you come through it. But yeah, materials make a huge bit of difference. I got some good information to share for you guys if you're interested in learning about that. It's very eye-opening. It's like, wow.
Okay. Sorry, Dr. Jensen. We've actually reached the end of the seminar, and there's a schedule looking, so we got to cut it short. Everybody, thanks for coming. To our panelists, thanks for being here. I would invite you to ambush them if you have any more questions as they're leaving. And thanks for coming, everybody.